Phil here. So, like probably an awful lot of you, I have been playing D&D online for about the last year and a bit since the COVID lockdown, and I was actually had just started as a player in a campaign February before lockdown, before the March, and that was the last time I actually interacted with humans in a D&D setting. So, like a lot of people, ended up moving over to online campaigns. The first one I had experience of was Roll20. It was grand. Its interface, trying to get used to it, was obviously slightly different, but they had very similar character sheets. Next group that I ended up playing with were using Fantasy Ground. So I started playing Fantasy Ground. Myself and a friend of mine had been wanting to run Strad for a while, and we put together a group and we had Fantasy Ground, so off we went with it. So we stuck with Strad for Fantasy Ground, and then I started my campaign also using Fantasy Ground. The story is probably similar if you have used Roll20 or any of those. The big problem I have with Fantasy Ground and Roll20, and that is the advantage is, yes, it's an interface that everybody has access to the resources that are in it. It's all contained in one application. Things I don't like about it is that it's quite expensive. It is expensive whether or which you even buy content. Wizards of the Coast are quite good, as you know. There is an awful lot of resources online to start playing D&D for free. You can print off character sheets, legitimately print them off, legally print them off, and away you go. And there's a lot of the basic classes and that and spells and that are in the core free stuff. So and that stuff is in Fantasy Ground, and I'm sure it's also probably in Roll20 as free. But there is a pay barrier. You still have to pay for the software, and I don't begrudge paying for software. I am a software developer myself, so yeah, I get that. However, Fantasy Ground and Roll20, it is a barrier. Now you might say, well, hang on a second, I played in the game and I just needed a demo account. Yes, that's true. Fantasy Ground and Roll20 allow the DM to purchase a special type of license, and it's not cheap. For example, Fantasy Grounds is, I think it's $140 for the once off, or $10 a month, and that allows a person host the game, and then demo people with a demo license can come in. So somebody has paid quite a lot of money for to be able to set up this game. The other alternative is with like Fantasy Ground is to have a standard license, and that's $40 one-off cost. Again, you can monthly rent it, which gets you it's rentware. But then everybody has to have a standard license. It doesn't allow any demo players, and that's a barrier for saying to someone, "Hey, why don't you try out and play D&D with us?" And they say, "Oh, I've never played D&D before, but I'd like to try it out." And you go, "Yeah, well, I'd pay $40 for a license, and that gets you no content apart from the stuff that Wizards of the Coast give you free. Fantasy Ground doesn't give it to you free." So it is a problem. It is a huge barrier. The other thing I don't like, especially with Fantasy Grounds, now I've tried it. Fantasy Ground Classic is what I have the license for, and I got to experience Fantasy Ground Ultimate, Unity, the new one. Very underwhelmed. It's the exact same user interface, doesn't look like anything different, and that's what's on the screen there. And part of the problem is it's all in one window, so you can't, if you have multiple monitors, that you can't, it's very hard to spread over the stuff. You can't, if you open up another instance of it as a self-contained one, you have to try and stretch the application over. And as you can see here, this looks very 1980s. And the new version of it, which fixes some issues with hosting, you host on their server as opposed to a peer-to-peer hosting, it looks identical, and it's very chunky and clunky. And other things I don't like, I have the player's handbook and the DM's manual here, and apart from doing searches with it, it's not useful. You can't really just take a book out of it. Yeah, sure, of course you can go, I want to see, well, images is probably a bad one, I want to see NPCs from, and you can see, oh, these ones are from the player's manual. But again, you're into a searching mechanism. You can't really use the spells. It's messy. Like, you have to know essentially, oh, here's a list of the spells, and read through them. There's no sort of I want to spell on something. No, it's not presented in a very nice sort of way. Anyway, so we were playing one of our campaign. We were talking about bringing in a couple of other players as sort of guest players, and it seemed unfair to expect them to buy a license. Uh, so we decided to look in the current campaign that I'm GMing, which is on our stream and YouTube channel. And in last week's episode, we actually migrated across to something that wouldn't have a paid barrier. Yeah, I'm not talking about the content you may pay not buy inside it, like the player's handbook, and that's another gripe. If you buy the player's handbook and the DM manual inside Fantasy Ground, that's it. It's in Fantasy Ground. You can't move it. You can't port it over to Roll20 or to any other stuff. So it locks you in this ecosystem, and that's something I don't like. So we decided to have a look around, and one of the players had experience of Owlbear Rodeo. So we started using that. So I'm just going to talk to you about the feasibility of moving over stuff. And if you watch that DV or that video of us last week playing it, you can see it's a bit ropey at the start, and I made a couple of mistakes with stuff. I didn't the initiative tracker. I didn't switch it on and that. So okay, so how do you play it? What do you do if you want to? If you want to go down a different avenue, well, you obviously need somewhere. You need a virtual desktop or whatever you want to call it, and you need something that you can share maps and pictures with. Owlbear Rodeo, which I'll send a link in the thing for it, is great. It's free. You can upload maps. The maps can be JPEGs or PNGs, any sort of the usual file types that you can get, and you can also load pictures. So here's the DM view. So for example, you want to tell the players about, there's a culvert under Dublin Castle. So they log in with the URL that you give them. You can password protect it, and they will see what you pump out to them. You have a slight couple of extra tools, like over here you have fog and stuff. So you can show pictures and you can say, this is the culvert under Dublin Castle that you're going to be going under. You'd find a ladder on the left, and when you pop up into it and you say, this is what Dublin Castle looks like from the outside, blah 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 blah, you're going to come up into this area. It has some nice little features like this little pointer, which they will see on the thing. You can see a little drop, and you're going to come up into the castle, into the grounds there, and then when you're up into the castle, you will find, so outside of the castle, blah 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 blah, there's the castle, and then you can put player tokens onto it. So if you have their tokens all loaded, so, and they can move these around, and then you can put in NPCs, and there's Boris the gibbering mouter from our episode, and they can move them around, and they have range tools to different things, and you can lock the tokens, and you can put notes on the screen. You can do all that. There's a lot of nice resources, videos online about how to use Owlbear. I'm just seeing, do I have any of these prepped? I think this one here, yeah, it might have fog in it. So you're looking at the DM view, and then you can toggle in between the DM view and what the players will actually see. So for example, sorry, this is it here. So this is the player's view, basically nothing, and this is the DM's view. Okay, so Owlbear is a great mechanism for presenting maps and pictures and other resources that you can use, and it's free. There is a Patreon page. It's free. So what else do you need? Well, the next thing you need is, well, you need character sheets and that, and of course you can use, oh yeah, sorry, I should just say on Owlbear as well, it does feature a dice roller. So if you want a D20, there's a D20, and you'll see it comes up here, whatever settles on the DM, and if other people roll it, they won't see this, the other people don't see that this is for your review, but they will see the results of the review, the rolls from here. And you can re-roll that one, and you can take as many dice in or dice out as you want, and that you just pop that in, get your map back, and it still shows the result there until such time as you press that needs to be gone. So there is a dice roller in Owlbear. Okay, so the next thing you need is character sheets, and of course you can use paper character sheets or whatever. We use D&D Beyond. So you need to create a free account, and then you can create a character sheet. And what I like about these ones are they look like the real world character sheets that you would have. And they have a lovely, I must say, it's really, really nice phone app that accompanies it. And now my phone was doing an update, so hopefully it's back out of that mode of refusing to do anything. And what is nice is there is a campaign view, which just shows you everybody previous rolls. So I'm going to roll. Now this was a bit buggy the other day. Some of the players, it wouldn't work properly. And they can roll from either their character sheets on their phone, and it's a lovely character sheet, and it brings up all the stuff, and it's very much like the paper one. So I'm going to just do a dexterity roll there, and you can see, there we go, Chewy. Oh, you can't actually, sorry, you can't see it because I'll move this across there. Stop doing that. You can see there that Chewy rolled did a dexterity check. I'm going to do, say, a spell, and we'll say it's a magic missile, good old magic missile, and which automatically hits. And there's the first damage, there's the second damage, and there's the third damage. So that works nicely. If people switch on the game log, they all see the game log. And what is also you can do is, if you don't want to use the phone, so we use the phones for this, especially as two people were using the same monitor. What is also nice about this is you can actually roll from the character sheet itself. So say unarmed strike, and there's the unarmed strike. So that's a nice feature. So these character sheets are lovely. And on D&D Beyond, you need an account, a free account, and D&D Beyond will then give you access to all the free Wizards of the Coast starter pack information. So you don't need to pay anything else, so you can get your basic character sheet. If you want to create extra spells or homebrew, again, that isn't a problem. I'm not going to be doing a tutorial in this video on character creation or whatever, but you can see there is a homebrew area over here, and you can create spells, create your own spells, or you can download from the community. And this is great. Here's my creations. So our dog has a special, and there's his class. He's Canine Magicus. It's a magic dog, a wizard dog. So this was a special subclass I created, and he has special wounds like Canine Shake It Off, which he gets regenerates healing at the end of his turn, and then his Dog Slobber, which is basically cure wounds. And then I have a custom sword here, and then I have custom potions and the likes of that. So it's very good, and again, free, don't have to buy any content. I did buy the player's handbook because I wanted access to it for my student, got to for players and that, and it does have actually, which is something that I liked about it, unlike in Fantasy Ground, if you go into the D&D app on the phone, you can actually, I'm just going to call it up there, library of the stuff that you have already bought, and you can hit open book, and it opens up the player's handbook in a very nice indexed, very easy to search, and very handy if you're out and about and you suddenly need to find a rule. So I did buy the player's handbook, but it's not necessary to use the starter stuff. So we've seen we're using the maps for our Owlbear Rodeo for our maps and presenting information to the players. We're using D&D Beyond for the character sheets, and we've seen both of these have dice rollers. So combat tracker, what's happening? Of course, you could just do it on a piece of paper with a spreadsheet or whatever, but I found this one, which is by a crowd called Improved Initiative. Again, this is a free to use. There is a Patreon login which allows you sync and download extra stuff. And it uses again the Wizards of the Coast starter pack stuff is all built in. So all the typical spells that you would expect from the starter pack are there, and the characters. And this is nice because it lets you know, you can see on this character sheet here, or this one here, I have a water weird. And you might say, that isn't a standard creature. And you're right, it doesn't come with the standard pack, but it's very easy to create your own characters in here. Creatures in here. You can go add new creature, and you can import the stat block, and you can build your own creatures. So in this one I have a water weird, Chewy, Ogre, Jelly, Whacker. These are the characters, Swarm of Bats and whatever. And you notice the character ones here is only 1 health point, because we're not using this to track the players' hit points. The players are doing that themselves. This is just to show their place on the initiative tracker. And we are tracking the hit points from our NPCs here. So to start it off, and this was the mistake I made when we were doing the video the other day, I forgot to actually hit the play symbol. So you hit start, and the first thing I'll do is it'll ask you to roll an initiative. It'll roll the initiatives, but of course you can modify them yourselves because your players are probably re-rolling their initiatives. So for example, this one, so Adam says, well, he didn't roll a 19, and you can change his initiative on this. Okay, so what happens is once we go into play, it'll show you swarm of bats are up, and it'll bring up, and this is nice, it'll bring up all the information about them and the attacks and everything else. The players don't get this view because, hey, they were saying, well, they can see everything that's in the initiative tracker, and of course you can toggle the bats on or off. So let's say we just have the Shrieker on it, but he's not actually, the Shrieker isn't in view, and the Water Weird is below the water line, but that's their place on the other one, and the Ochre Jelly is around the corner. So all the players should see at the moment is 2 swarms of bats come out at them. Okay. Right, so I've actually done that the other way around, so because I had them. So we're going to hide the Shrieker, we're going to hide the Weird, and we're going to hide the Jelly. So we'll see that. So the players, what do they see? Well, you can see here, player view launched, and you can copy this URL. So you can give them this URL, and then if they open up using this URL, they get a slightly different view. This is the view they get. So you can see in their view, it says swarm of bats, and it says healthy. Adam, swarm of bats, and that's the only thing that's on it. As we move through the play, you go, yeah, next player up. Adam does deal damage to, he does 10 hit points and 10 HP to the swarm of bats, so they take some damage. The player view then suddenly sees, oh, swarm of bats has gone to hurt, whereas you have the full controls. As one of the players rounds the corner, he spots a Shrieker, or a Shrieker spots him, so the Shrieker then comes on into play. You can see straight away Shrieker appears on their combat tracker, and then the Shrieker shrieks and the Water Weird pops out of the water, and then they can now all see the Water Weird. So this is a nice little application which lets you build your encounters in advance, and it lets you just populate them, and away you go. And once you remember to start it, and once you remember to keep on hitting down. And I do like the fact that up in the bar here, so the way I'm going to run this next Thursday is I'm going to have this is on a laptop beside me, so I'll be able to see and read the stat blocks as we go along, and the players then will just have this view here, and it'll just see healthy, hurt, or whatever, and they'll see the running order. So those are the 3 tools, and we're using Discord for voice and audio. So they're the tools that we're using. We're using the key one that is really the game changer for this is Owlbear Rodeo for the maps and presenting them with information. We're using D&D Beyond for the stat sheets and the character sheets. We're using improved initiative for the combat stroke initiative tracker, and we're using Discord for voice and video. Okay, any questions on how to use any of these, let me know, and we'll do a video on it. Thank you very much.